Hello, welcome to the video notes for lesson 5-14. This begins on page 77 in your notes packet from your binder. And this lesson is about comparing absolute rates or slopes. So, the learning target for this is I can compare rates or slopes of linear functions using absolute value of the rates or slopes. So what we're doing is, by taking the absolute value, we're going to be saying that it doesn't matter if the rate or the slope is a positive or a negative. We want to compare which is greater, because sometimes it could be greater, but it's a negative number, and people think of negatives as actually being smaller. So we take them as an absolute value. Okay? Alright, so the graph shows the result of a plant growing contest. I'm sure you probably remember this example from throughout this entire topic, among 3 friends at a local plant club. Which friend had the greatest rate of change? Now, let me move the screen up a little bit so we can focus in on this. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is, and I know we've done this before for this particular example, but really quickly, I'm going to find the 3 different rates of change. So I have friend 1, friend 2. Actually, let's do this one at a time. Friend 1, and I'll use purple because on the graph it's purple. Friend 1 is going to be a change in y over change in x. So the rate is decreasing 2 inches every 1 week, down 2 over 1. So that's minus 2 over 1, or just negative 2. And if we're thinking it as a rate, it's negative 2 inches per week. Friend 2 is in red. Change in y over change in x is, now this one is going, I'm going to go from this point to this point here, and then to this one, and then to this one. So up 1, which is actually 2, and then over 2 spaces. So up 2 over 2. Up 2 over 2. So positive 2 on top, positive 2 on the bottom. That simplifies to 1 inch per week. And then the last one is friend 3. And change in y over change in x for this one. So this is going from this point to this point to this point. So we're going up 2, which is really 4. So up 4 over 3. Up 4 over 3. So positive 4 over 3. Now, for this, since we're comparing these 3, it may make more sense to turn it into a decimal or a mixed number. So, just because I need to be able to compare it. 1 1/3 inches per week. Now, which has the greatest rate of change? Well, some of you might be saying, well, it's 1 1/3 because this is the largest number of the 3. Now, here's the problem. Negative 2, although it's smaller because it's a negative, it's actually the greatest rate of change. And what we have to do here is we have to take the absolute value of it, which is 2. So its rate of change is 2. So F1 has the greatest rate of change. friend 1. Alright, so let's talk about something here. Absolute rate of change is used to compare the rates or slopes of linear functions when rates or slopes are not positive. So you'll see this absolute rate of change is change in y over change in x, and they do absolute value. So essentially, if you have a negative value, treat it like a positive. And that way you can compare which has the greater rate of change. Alright, we have some examples below. We'll work through a couple, and I'll leave a couple for you to finish on your own, or maybe one to finish on your own. Alright, the first one. Which rate, or actually, I'm sorry, this question is for all of them. Which rate or slope has the greatest rate of change? So, this first one, the change in y over the change in x is 1/3. If I take the absolute value of it, which I don't need to because it's already positive, it's 1/3. Now, sometimes it helps, like I said, to treat it like a decimal. Oops, 0.3 repeating. Because when we're comparing numbers, if they're in fractional form, then we would have to have a common denominator. So the next one, the rate of change is in front of x. Oh, I should have circled that over here. And it is -1/2. But I need to take the absolute value of that when I'm comparing it. So the absolute value of -1/2 is equal to 0.5. The next one, y equals 1/2. What is the rate of change for this? And that's actually kind of a trick question. There is no number in front of the x value, in front of the input. So m, or the change in y over the change in x, is 0. Not undefined, 0. And then the last one, here's our number again in front of x. It is a negative value, so we'll have to take the absolute value. Change in y over change in x is -1/5. I'm going to take the absolute value of that and turn it into a decimal. 0.2. Alright, so I have 0. That's the smallest. 0.2. That's the next smallest. 0.3 repeating. That's the next smallest. The 0.5, or the 1/2, is the greatest rate of change. Now, again, this might sometimes get overlooked because it's a negative value, but we're looking for the amount of change. Even though it's negative, it's more of a change. It's 0.5 compared to 0.3 repeating, 0.2, and 0. Alright, pretty short and sweet lesson. If you had trouble with this, you can rewatch the video or come and see me. Ask a friend or an adult for help. Good luck, and we will see you in math.